order and take the opportunity to welcome everybody. I appreciate you're here, the fact that you're here, and I appreciate the interest in the city of Calhoun. At this time, if you'll please rise for the invocation and remain standing for our flags are gone. For where the Pledge of Allegiance for where the flags used to be.
Let's pray. Father, we thank you for the many blessings of life. We thank you for the opportunity we have to live and work here in Calhoun and Gordon County. We ask that you be with those in our community who are struggling with sickness, recovering from surgeries, dealing with the loss of a loved one, or have any special needs along those lines. We ask also that you be with our troops as they protect our interests and freedoms around the world. Bring them home safely and make it soon if at all possible. We ask also that you continue to bless the city, the employees of the city, all those who have a part in the day-to-day operations of the city's business. And ask especially now that you be with us here tonight as we deliberate the business of the city, and that we ask that you help us to make decisions that would be pleasing to you. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. That was weird. Just shows you the masses will follow the line.
We're pledging to the wall.
Pledge allegiance to the northwest corner.
We should have put somebody's phone up there. Matt should have put a picture of the flag.
In your packet, everybody's been presented with a copy of tonight's proposed agenda. If there are no additions or corrections, to have a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed. Also, you have a copy of the minutes of the April the 10th regular council meeting. If there are no additions or corrections to those minutes, to have a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed. Remind everybody that everybody's welcome to stay for a budget work session immediately following this meeting. It's the budget and operating budget and capital plan for the upcoming year. Take the opportunity to thank all the employees that have worked, and Mr. Peterson and Mr. Worley and Mr. Vickery and everybody, all the department heads and the finance that have worked very hard on this. And once again, a lot of them are here tonight. And that meeting will be immediately following this. Under old business, we have a tabled item under number A. And with that, that's the Benstone Road dedication. Do I have a motion to remove it from the table?
So moved. Second.
Motion second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Mr. Peterson.
Benstone Drive was a road that got caught up in the 2008, 2009, 2010 recession. It was a subdivision that had started, and it was 3 phases. And the first phase has been completed: binder, topping, street lights, signage, curb, gutter, drainage, everything up to our standards and specs other than sidewalk. And there's about 2,200 feet of 5-foot sidewalk, and within our ordinance, when a substantial portion of the street has been completed to the satisfaction of the Director of Public Works, and the final completion of the street is delayed due to condition beyond control of the developer, the Public Works Director may recommend to the Mayor and Council to accept the completed portion and consent to a proportionate reduction of the bond in an amount estimated and determined by the Director of Public Works to be adequate to ensure the completion of the street as planned. As I mentioned, this street is complete except for the sidewalk, and in the past we have allowed sidewalks to be installed in phases where they would not be damaged while construction was going on. And I would recommend that we accept this road, this phase, contingent upon performance bond being issued by the owner on the 2,200 feet of 5-foot sidewalk, and this sidewalk to be completed within a year's time.
Any questions or comments concerning the dedication of Benstone Road?
Yeah, I'll make some comments, Mr. Mayor. We, like most communities in the southeast, particularly here in northwest Georgia, got caught up with the recession that hit and some developments that weren't completed and some negative impacts on some homeowners. I've asked Mr. Peterson as well as this council to make sure that we, as we move forward with growth, which is coming to Calhoun, that we make sure we got the right bonding mechanism in place and the right time limits on sidewalk completion. And I'm very pleased with what Mr. Peterson's done, and I'll make a motion to approve with those amendments.
Second.
Motion and second, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed. Next item was a resolution calling for a special election concerning term limits and increasing the number of council members from 4 at the time. So, first of all, I need a motion to remove it from table.
Second.
2 motions, 2 seconds.
Good deal, Mr. Mayor.
Any discussion?
I got that budget session.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Mr. Givinian, do you have anything to say about that?
No, sir. I mean, I understand the council's desire. I apologize, given time constraints this afternoon. I have not been able to remodify the resolution, but I will submit that and send it to the clerk tomorrow if approved. My understanding is right now we have a resolution that has 2 questions. One calling for whether or not, yes or no, for the mayor and council to initiate the process to amend the charter through local law in the General Assembly for term limits, and the other one is for an increase from the current number of sitting members of the council from 4. During the work session today, the discussion was to amend those, which I believe, after examining the issue after the meeting, would require me to add 3 questions then, because the specificity requested is that one question be yes or no, whether or not to begin the process for council members to have, if I recall correctly, a limit of 3 terms. The mayor to have a
Consecutive terms.
3 consecutive terms. The mayor to have a limit of 2 consecutive terms, and then the question with regards to increasing the council, instead of just being a generic question, increasing to specifically ask opinion on increasing from 4 to 6 at large.
Right.
And so I'll just need to go back and amend that if that's what passes tonight.
I'm not sure I understand. The 3 items, the first on term limits was was to put term limits as to the question of 2 for the mayor and 3 for council.
Yes, sir,
correct?
that would have to actually be 2 separate questions at this point.
And I would remind the council that in the fact that the mayor only serving 2 terms, to me, it would be difficult to limit that to 2 terms when you can there's no requirement for any experience in that office. For example, when I ran the first time, there were 4 of us in the race, and I was the only one that had any experience on the council. So I just say that to the council here tonight, that I think there's a learning process for somebody that has not been on the council before, as to the fact that they would spend a good bit of time in that first term just learning a little bit about the city. That's just my thought.
Well, my question on why it has to be 3 questions.
I was just making that statement. I don't remember that really being, I saw the email that came out from David, of course, and Matt and Jackie, I think, approved it along with it, said they approved it, but I don't remember, maybe I was asleep during the work session today where we actually had a discussion about the times. I just mentioned it as a that it could be detrimental, I think, to the office if, and I just, not for a legal opinion, I know what you're saying. I just say that to the council
It's not legal,
for their
it's
consideration.
just to the council that when you're doing one of these things, it's not like a telephone pole where on a scale of 1 to 10, highly unlikely or most likely kind of thing. Statistically, it's easier to keep it to a simpler answer. That being said, I made notes when there was a discussion before the presentation today. You would need to, if that is in fact the wish and desire of the council, that would need to be in two separate questions, because again, the more simplified the question on the ballot,
Sure.
if you look at the constitutional issues, they're just yes or no. Because particularly if you're gauging opinion, if we put both those term limits in the same question, you don't know how many people are voting no because they don't want the limits on the council members.
Does that really matter, George? If it's a no vote, we don't want to move forward. If it's a yes vote, we can. Let me make a comment also. This council,
Can I finish explaining that real quick?
sure,
It's because you don't know why they're voting no. That's all I wanted to finish saying.
Yeah.
You don't know if they're voting no because the council members or the mayor, which is why I'm proposing to go to two questions, from two questions to three questions. And I apologize, I did not mean to cut.
No, not at all. The more opinions, the better.
Well, and that way, at least we know if they're voting no on council members, if they're voting no on mayor, as opposed to when you have them both in the same question, you don't know which one they're voting no to.
Well, again, let me back us up a little bit. Last year, this council voted unanimous to move ahead with term limits. It's something that a lot of cities in Georgia and other states are looking at doing. It's pretty commonplace. Alpharetta is doing it now. They're using the example of 2 terms, consecutive terms for the mayor, 3 for the council. We got into a delay feature last year, so we couldn't get it on the ballot. That's why we're defining it more closely. I do believe it should be just 2 questions, yes or no, do you want term limits? If you do, here's what they're going to be. Yes or no, do you want more members? If so, here's what you want to be. If it votes no, then that's what it should be. If that's what the population wants, then so be it. One thing we did about 6 or 8 years ago, we made a motion to do a rotation on the mayor pro tem slot, and every one of us except Jackie Palazzolo has served as a mayor pro tem. That's kind of a training field. You never know when health issues, mortality, whatever, could leave a vacant office, and you need every person on your team prepared and ready to go. And so with these statements made, my motion will be that we go ahead and move forward with term limits, yes or no, on the ballot, 3 consecutive terms for the council, 2 consecutive terms for the mayor. Now, when we say consecutive terms, let's use me for example. I'm up for election this year. I would automatically come off because of term limits, which I think is what we should be doing. At that point, someone else would be an open seat with more people trying to get that seat. And then the very next city election, whether a scheduled election or a special election, anyone who rolls off because of term limits could get back into the city service again by running for re-election and the citizens voting to support them. So the 3-2 seems to be the most common. The council is the body that does the voting. The mayor's vote is to break a tie. As we look at going to additional members, we started looking at what was around the state. Eddie and I, 10 years ago, pulled up a comparative of salaries for mayors, salaries for council members, number of members on the councils. The vast majority 10 years ago was more than just 4 council members. I think Matt's got some statistics on what it is for the state now, but you could go with 5 members and not have a tie vote. You could go to 6 members and have a tie vote and the mayor be able to veto or approve that motion. When you go with more members, you're bringing in a greater diversity of ideas, more opinions. We're going to be growing. I know we're going to debate that to some degree tonight, but we're going to be growing. We're looking at the Housing Authority plans that was projecting 115% growth. It's happening. It's just what's going on. So I will make the motion that we go with an extended membership on the council and go with 6 members instead of 4. So that's my motion.
Man, George, I mean, there's no reason, there's no difference on having having to be specific on those things. You're just saying, so you would know. That's what your suggestion is?
I'm recommending that it be, we already have 2. It doesn't take anything to make a 3rd one, so that the council question would be an independent question, the mayor question would be an independent question, and then the increase in the amount, just so you get a more accurate result on each of the 3 questions. I mean, I understand where you're coming from, Councilman, but this just goes back to my old statistics class.
Yeah, but if you get a no, then you know the answer is no, and there's no reason
That's
to
what I was gonna go. I
proceed any
mean,
further.
Yes,
We don't
sir,
need to
but
know why, if they
Yeah.
don't want the,
If we're going to the expense to add it on a vote, I would want to know
I
what
don't-
they're voting no.
My personal preference is a straw poll isn't necessary, just what the voters want. So that's my motion. I'm going to stand
it
beside
just
it.
makes it more complicated.
I don't think it's any more complicated to have one, to bifurcate the one question into 2, but that's up to y'all. I just need instructions on what I'm to draft based upon what's passed tonight.
Well, that's the motion if it passes.
I mean, I'll second that motion. I mean, that's what I agree with as well. I mean, it just makes it simple. There's not much to add to it.
As for discussion on that, the council, even at work session today, was not 100% behind this, but we all were in agreement that to giving the voters the opportunity to look at that and give us what their thoughts were. We would appreciate that, and it would work very well in that area. But one of the things that I have, in my opinion, is that we already have term limits in place. Those term limits are set by you, the voter. You'll have that opportunity in November. As Councilman Hammond said, he is up for election, and also Councilman Barton. You'll also have that opportunity to set those term limits in 2 years from November, as the other 2 council positions and the position of mayor are up. And out of 50 cities in the state of Georgia, only 23 of them have term limits. And of those, one of them just voted term limits off. So there are varying opinions, as Councilman Hammond said, all over the state. And as far as increasing the number from 4 to 6, I think the city's served itself very well in the past with 4 council members. I personally do not see the need for 2 additional council members, especially when you look at, since '07, today the square mileage inside the city of Calhoun is 13.2 square miles. It's grown very little since '07. I realize part of that's due to the recession, but also along with that, you can look at the population. The population has gone from the 2010 census, I believe it was 15,567, I think. And it's approximately 16,000 now, perhaps a little bit over. So it's grown since 2010, 100 or less in population each year. And I think while we're talking about that, I think there's something else that the voters need to consider when they're looking at the increase from 4 to 6. It will be an additional $30,000 to $40,000 of budget expense when you consider the salary and the travel that goes in along with that. But that's, I would ask at this
I
time.
have one more comment, Mr. Mayor, to go with what you just said. And let me remind the audience, now most of your staff, but this is being streamed live on YouTube, and it is available for replay. All the tapes we've done so far is approaching 100 views, so the citizens are looking in to see what's being said and why. We're going to be voting tonight on an annexation of a piece of property off the New Union Grove interchange. And with that piece of property, you're going to have commercial growth, and we talk about the availability of sewage and electricity and other utilities out to that site. We're looking at 547 acres. And then if you take in the property that stretches from the LG Haas all the way to the Adairsville city limits sign, you're looking at another 300 to 400 acres. When we were in the height, 2005 and 6 of growth, we were approving 200 and 300 acres, a year for annexation. No, we didn't have that during the Great Recession. We were surviving is all we were doing. But every indicator in state, federal, and local governments, and we're going to be doing the census, I mentioned that we've already had the first meeting. We're going to be looking at growth, and we had a professional design engineer here today who said, my God, the growth you guys are going to have when the inland port comes in is going to be phenomenal. And they're absolutely right. It is. So you're right. There are a lot of people who are not visionaries, and they can't see the need to do things before it's crisis. What we're trying to do is plan for that future. That's why we went with the rotational method with the mayor pro tem. We're trying to plan and be ahead of the curve. We don't want to be following other communities that don't meet the needs. That's the same token as elected officials. We don't want to be so smart that we know best and the voting public can't decide. And that's what they're going to get to do. They're going to get to decide on this. And you'll see a quote. It'll be locally. I can see the facial features from here. But look at it on YouTube. Watch what I'm saying. If you've got any questions, Mr. Mayor says this all the time. If you got any questions, call me. Stop me in my yard. Call me at home. I'll be glad to tell you why I believe so passionate in this. Now, most of us have a problem with elected officials and politics on the national level. We don't necessarily have that locally, and I'm grateful for it. But at the same token, let's try to put in positives if we can. And this is one where you, the voter, goes to the polls, and you just literally flip a no switch or a yes switch. Pretty simple.
Just take, that's the whole thing. It's not a binding issue. This is just a vote of an opinion from the public. So this does not put it in stone if it passes. It's got to still come back to us after that to decide what we want to do with that.
Can I ask a question? I'm sorry, am I allowed to ask a question right now?
Yeah, but let me finish what I was going to say first. I mean, but Mr. Mayor, and we haven't grown as much, but since the Great Recession, it has stopped. But before the urban development that we got just a few weeks ago, we had a 20-year increase to 119%. So from 1990 to 2010, we grew 119%. I mean, we went from 7,135 to 15,650. And so coming out of the Great Recession now, we're going to be growing like that again. And if we have a similar results, 119% over the next 20 years, it could be 30,000 people in Calhoun. And with the Emerson project going on in LaPorte, we're in the middle of Chattanooga and Atlanta, we will be increasing. So, I mean, but again, it's not a binding thing. So it's not, the vote tonight doesn't make it happen.
I realize that.
Not currently, in a public hearing, you would have to move to open the floor for comment.
Okay.
This is not on this agenda, it's a public hearing.
Okay. Well, one final comment. Let me say this. The only reason we revisited this rather than being generic is timetable. When the election is held the first Tuesday of November, if the vote's yes, then we'll have public hearings to get it to conversation so that by December the 31st, it is finalized. It can be passed to John Meadows, our local representative. John will have to bring it to the floor. He doesn't have to. If he chooses not to, it won't. But I know his personal philosophy on some other boards is that he's in favor of term limits, like the High School Association. So if term limits works in one arena, why wouldn't it work in other arenas? So let's just let the voters decide what they want, and once they decide, let's just move on with business.
As I say, I think we're all in agreement to put it on the ballot. In response a little bit to your population thing, Matt, in the comprehensive plan, I believe they gave projections as to population, and they had certain projections for 2030, I believe it was, and they were at a large number. And I've seen it several places where those numbers have been revisited at a much lower population number and increase. So, but with that, is there any other discussion? All those in favor of the resolution?
Aye.
All those opposed? Of the second reading of an annexation and zoning request of R1, This is for 1.32 acres. The location is 106 East 40th Drive, and the request is by Jack and Mary Jenkins. Zoning Advisory Board is scheduled to meet on May the 4th, public hearing on May the 8th. Also have the second reading of an annexation and zoning request. This request is for C2 for 14.81 acres at a location of parcel number 058-060. This request is by Love's Travel Stops and Country Stores. Zoning Advisory Board again meets on May the 4th and public hearing on May 8th. Also have the second reading of a sign variance request. This request is also by Love's Travel Stops and Country Stores. This is located at parcel number 058-060. Sign variance request is 160 feet for a height of the sign and a variance of 812 square feet for the face of the sign. Once again, the Zoning Advisory Board on May the 4th, public hearing on May the 8th.
Paul, correct me or restate for the public, if that goes in, they're projecting to be completed with that project by when?
December, end of this year,
And there's how many acres that could be developed along beside that?
in the neighborhood of 500 within that drainage basin that we're analyzing the sewer accessibility.
Mr. Peters.
All I have is our utilities and general fund cash report, and they're both, we're in a strong position day to day, and we have adequate reserves. I might mention again, on the general side, the revolving loan, we're up to $850,000 now. I did meet with a restaurant franchise company one day last week about something new in Calhoun, and they were very interested in the revolving loan. And matter of fact, they're going to come back to Calhoun next week and talk to me about that. So maybe something will come of that.
Good.
That's all I've got.
Great. Good information. And with that, I know of no reason to go to executive session. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second.
Motion, second discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
We got to meet again.
Paul, let me ask a question while everybody's still here. Are we going to be streaming the budget meeting also?
That would be y'all's choice. We'd have to do it up here to be in view of the camera.
Yeah.
If you want to do that, we can keep it running.
I'd make a motion to stream the budget meeting for the public's interest.
I don't have a problem with it. Second.
All right.